Hello and welcome to another CG Ninja tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be using the Sapling add-on in Blender 2.73. I don't think it has changed recently, but we're just going to go through it and show you exactly how to use it and the features of it that make it better than, well, any other tree add-ons that you can get. So let's just start by making a plane. Oops. Get it wrong. Right. Go again. Start by making a plane and enlarging this plane. I'd like to let you know that we're in the cycles render. I think everybody's in the cycle render nowadays. I don't think they use a cycle render, the Blender render anymore. So we're going to just make up a little scene for a start. So let's add a sun lamp and just bring it around here and just like that. So if we just go into the rendered view, it's just a basic flat plane with a sun lamp. So with that set up, we're going to use the Sapling add-on, and if you haven't got the Sapling add-on, it will be in the add-ons section here. If we go and type in Sapling, you will find it wherever it is. If I go all categories, Sapling, there it is. Add curve Sapling add-on. So we'll use that. So all you have to do is just tick the little box and it will be available for you there. So you go Shift A, go to the curve, right to the bottom it says add tree. So we're going to do that, we're going to add a tree, and then once you do that it gives you this quite a nice looking tree for a start. It starts off quite easy for you. So the settings are down here, so make sure you don't get rid of the settings by clicking off it or anything, so just don't, because then you'll have to add the tree in again. So we're going to go through geometry, branch splitting, leaves, armature, all of it. We'll just cover it all and show you what each bit does. So bevel, for a start, turns this curve, this spline curve, from a curve into an actual geometric shape. Look, so it's now actually a shape. This is actually the root of the tree, you know, the tree trunk and the wood, the branches. We'll have bevel revolution, makes it more smoother, increases more vertices though, so just keep that as 0. Curve resolution creates the curve, makes the curve a bit, you know, a bit smoother and better, so keep that at 4. And random seed, or we'll start with the shape of the tree. It gives you, these are preset shapes for how you want your tree to look. So at the moment this is a 10 flame 7 tree, so it's sort of, the branches start quite high up from the tree trunk and it sort of curves upwards. So we could go to inverse conical, which is very similar to the other one but just maybe a bit higher, a bit thinner. You can have the flame, which is just right at the top and the branches start. You could have a tapered cylindrical, again a bit thicker out, less of a curve on the branches. You can have just simply cylindrical, so these two don't really make much of a difference, they're not very differently apart. You got right, I'm going to try and pronounce this, hemispherical. Again, it doesn't really make much of a difference, it just adds or just changes the curvature of the branches. Spherical, and then conal. So depending on what type of tree you want, you can sort of play around with that. In this tutorial, for example, though, I'm going to use just a conical shape because I want to make like a sort of a forest, a snow foresty type tree. I don't know what the trees are called, you know, but the more I go into this, the more you'll sort of begin to understand what I'm trying to make. So the random seed here is, well, as you can expect, it gives you random different variations of shapes that you could use. There's an infinite amount of them. So just keep it at 0 because you can change the settings anyway. The ratio is how big or small, or shall I say how thick the tree trunk is. So you want to keep that at 0.1 because that can change later on as well. Now the scale is the scale of the whole tree. So if you want to scale that down, or a small tree, or you want a big tree, So you want to, do some scaling with that. Oops, what have I done? Just deleted my tree. Bring this back and then just bevel, conical. There you go, back to how it was. So yeah, the scale increases or decreases. Radius scale, again, it's like the ratio, how thick the tree trunk is. So let's make it about that, about 1.45. Scale variation is very similar just to the scale. So these things, they do different things, but they are very similar if you really think about it. Then there's the radius scale variation, again, does very similar to just the radius scale. Now, that's just the geometry, the basic tree settings that you've got there. But at the bottom here, you have load presets, and these are trees that have already been made by people in Blender, and they've got little preset trees that you could use. So if you wanted a weeping willow, it gives you this option here, which it just saves you from having to do that yourself. So, or one of these, a black oak, they're very out there, if you know what I mean. So I'm just gonna go back, delete my tree again, which ends up happening, bring my tree back, bevel, and then conical. So yeah, you can load a preset if you don't want to make the tree yourself or do much with it. Only if that preset, only if what you want matches one of these trees. So that's it for geometry. We're going to move now into branch splitting, which is probably the most important part of this, of the tree add-on, the sapling add-on. So you've got levels here, which tells you how many times the branches split off from each other. So this is 2, so it means it splits from the main trunk into these small branches. If it was 3, for example, it would go from the main trunk to the smaller branches, and then those smaller branches will have other branches splitting off on them as well. So for example, if I just do that, you can see you've got little branches splitting off on these branches. Made it 4. This is where it starts slowing down. You have those splitting off from these branches here as well. So it just adds more and more detail the more and more you get, but be careful, because if you look how many vertices I've got now, it can very, very quickly get out of hand and very slow. So I'm just going to keep this at 3 for now, because you can still add detail if you want. The base splits, very bizarre, but it basically, what it lets you do is it lets you split the main trunk. Look, if I did that, it splits into 2. It looks like it's split into 3. So this is very useful for maybe if you want to make like sort of a selection of a group of trees all sprouted from one place, or a bizarre tree that probably exists in the world somewhere where they have loads of base splittings. But for now, we're just going to keep it at the normal tree. Just going to keep it like that. Then we have base size, which is probably the most useful part. It's where you want the branches to come off from. So for example, at 0.4, it is quite high. So the branches come up here, they've got about half the tree. If I made this, if I shrunk this down to 0.2 or 0.19, the branches come down the tree. So it gives you the option of having them all the way up at the top, which is at 1, all the way at the top, and then bring them all the way down if you want to, if you want that option. So I reckon a 0.6, maybe a little bit lower. 0.16, 0.1. That looks quite nice. Sort of the Christmas tree look. Now, this section here is where it starts to get a little bit more in depth. So it gives you the branches here. Look. So if I increase this, it doesn't really do anything. But basically, what this does for you is it gives you the option to have all these things on each of the branch layers, if you know what I mean. So if we have segment splits, it splits them up. So if we put this all the way up, it just lowers the amount of the amount of branches on the tree, and each because you can see here it's got branches, it's got 4 different like options you have. This is for layer 1, this is for layer 2, this is for layer 3, and this is for layer 4. Okay, so for example, this has 50. If I lower this down, the second layer of branches, the ones that come off from the trunk, start to decrease. If I want less of these start to decrease on the ones that are splitting from here. So it gives you the option to really go in and change the settings for every single one of them if you really want. You can really just get as much detail in as you want, and it gives you the down angle, the rotate angle, and you've got the branch radius ratio, which is again very important. The higher you make it, the less of the branches you find. Because why it does again? Because when you see ratio on this sapling add-on, you really it's really like the thickness of the radius of the trunk and the branches. Look, so we're going to put that at about a 1.23 for that. Now, the most important thing, other than these two are the most important thing, but what you really want to do now is look at the leaves. Leaves. This is probably the most important part of the thing, because it turns your dead tree into a summer tree, something that that you will see. So in the leaf settings we have show leaves, which you want to do. You want to tick that. I'm just going to save this. I'll just call it tree tutorial, if I can spell tutorial right. There you go. So now that doesn't look very realistic at the moment, because the trees are hexagonal. You can't really have leaf-shaped leaves because there isn't really a shape for them. So you've got hexagonal leaves or rectangular leaves. I prefer to go for the rectangular leaves because it lowers the amount of segments, even though at the moment this doesn't look the best, because it just doesn't. I'll show you how I can make it look good after this, because you don't want these leaves aren't going to be this big anyway. These are just big squares of paper by the looks of things on the trees. So you want to do is you could increase the amount. If I put this down to 10 or 9 or 0.9, I don't know what it's doing actually. So 50. If you want to put 50 leaves, it says there 50 leaves. And also with this as well is when you make the leaves, when you show the leaves, it adds a separate mesh to your original tree. So you've got your original tree here, your original tree, and then your leaves. Okay, and I've just gone rid of the I've just got rid of the panel there again. This is irritating. This is what I'm going to say for people in Blender. If you want to don't, whatever you do, just don't click off it, because then it takes this away and you can't ever have it back. So just make sure you're very careful with this anyway. So I've got a different tree now, but it'll have to do. So yeah, the leaves and the tree itself are separate. They are treated separately, so you can play with them separately. You could actually take the leaves off the tree and throw them away if you want to. I don't know why you would. But then there's leaf distribution, which, as you would expect, is distribution of the leaves, and it follows the same pattern as with the tree style. Like, so you have conical, you have spherical, you have a flame, inverse conical. But as you remember, ours was conical. So that just distributes the leaves in a conical fashion. Leaf scale, as you would expect, is how big you want the leaves to be or how small you want them to be. When you're trying to make a tree, you really want to have them to be a very small amount, so very small leaves. And then the leaf scale, leaf scale X is the scale in the X direction, in the X axis, as you would imagine. And leaf bend is how, like, the variation of which way you want your leaves to go. So you want to put maybe a little bit of bend on there, but it doesn't really matter too much. So I'm just going to go back to branch splitting and have more than one layer, and then base size to lower that down. So I've got more like a Christmas tree effect here, and then just maybe add some more branches and save that like that. Oops. Right. So if I went into the rendered mode with this tree, I mean, I think I'm done with this tree. I like my tree. If I went into rendered mode, it doesn't look particularly interesting as a tree. It's not. There's no textures with it really. Let's be honest. But because I want this to be a snow tree, I want it to look like it's just been snowing all over the tree. White is good, really, because what I'm going to do, if you want to make like a forest for the tree, you can do that if you want. But as you can see here, if I choose the leaves, if I take this away, choose the tree and the leaves separately, look, you can click on which one you want. But with this now, we're going to go into the materials tab, and I'm just going to go like that, add a new material, and then let's put the preview up here. And then we're just going to very, very simply, for the leaves, because it's just snowed all over them, you just want it to be white, but you can't just have white here, you have to have a bit of white with something else. So we're not even going to use the node editor, we're going to use a glossy shader, and then we're going to use a diffuse shader, which is here. And these are going to be both white. And let's see how that looks. Maybe lower that, lower the roughness, maybe a bit more of a shiny effect to it. Now let's change the ratio around, which we want to do about there actually, because we want it to have a bit of a shine to it, but we don't really need it to have a bit of a shine to it. And for the tree trunk itself, you could go in and find a texture for it, but because this isn't really a tutorial about texturing a tree, I'm just going to make it very, very dark brown. My very and I'm actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to add a mix shader as well. I refuse to do that. I refuse to make a texture with so little care. So mix shader, wherever it is, I always lose it, and then we'll do a diffuse and a glossy again. Don't really matter in my opinion of which way you put it round when you're just doing something as simple as this. So diffuse color brown, very brown color. The color of the roughness should be brownish as well, but the roughness I'm going to put as 0. No, I don't want to put it as 0. I don't want it to be complete reflection. And then I'm just going to increase or decrease, sorry, the factor. So I've got a little bit of a funny color of a tree, to be honest with you. But as you can see there, this tree is taking a little bit more shape. You don't need to put, what I'm trying to put as much detail in the look of the tree. I'm not trying to put the detail in the texture, because I would have textured it with an actual texture. So now what we're going to do is we are going to duplicate this tree. We've got both of them, and we're going to duplicate it down here, and we're just going to set up a nice little scene here. Now, it's one tip that I would say is that when you are going to make these trees and you see these the leaves and you think they're a bit big here, or in this case I think these are fine when I'm looking at it in this viewport, when you do render it they will look smaller than you anticipated, so just bear that in mind. But in this case it's not too bad. So let's have that there. So we've got 4 trees in a unified pattern here. So let's have a look at this. Let's change some of the emission settings. Let's make it a slight tinge of blue. It's a foresty. It's a bit late for a Christmas scene, but you could sort of go along that lines. And then also, just to now, isn't that a lovely scene? And there you have it. So this has been a very basic overview of how to use the Sapling add-on, and ready to get something that would normally be quite a daunting task, trying to make a tree in Blender just really as quick as anything. You could really make a tree scene as quickly as you want. I I'm not really done with the sapling add-on. I really like the sapling add-on, so I might do a couple more tutorials in making certain scenes where there is, a sapling, where there's quite a predominant use of the sapling add-on, because I think I did one on a foresty mountain scene. I might want to do something else, maybe a jungle scene, but I do enjoy doing these type of scenes because they are really easy to do, and they really give you some good results. In this case, not as good with the texture of the trunk, but other than that, you can really, if you put more effort into this and you put as much detail in as you can, it would come out and be a great scene. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something from this tutorial. See you maybe in the next tutorial, and yeah.